Good afternoon, guys.
Oh man, Sean, I could tell by the backdrop we're gonna have a crazy, crazy
I know.
conversation. I was
Yeah,
like, is that a spaceship?
yeah.
Yeah,
Sean Callahan,
we are
welcome.
going to be launching off into a spaceship and doing
Yeah,
some interstellar travel.
That
yeah.
sounds awesome,
And
man. I'm down.
yeah,
I
you'll love it.
we are very into all of the things that we're about to talk about with our little quick preview that we got from you beforehand. So it's going to be dense, I have a feeling. So again, Sean Callahan, welcome, and thanks for coming over, and thanks in advance for whatever the hell's about to happen here.
Yeah, man. Normally Matt and I ask, like, how'd you get here? So like, you can give us a little rundown of like what brought you to this point, and then kind of what brought you to all this crazy tech.
He came out of the
Yeah, man.
womb looking for red light therapy,
Is he
and,
actually-
Yeah,
and the rest is history.
Oh yeah, the red light stuff is really popular. It's very
Yeah, yeah.
popular here. I do have to say before I even get started, I can tell right now that if we ever hung out together, we'd be out till bar time. I'm just going to
Yeah.
let that be said. We would be out chatting it up and having a great time.
Yeah, no,
so,
we're.
yeah.
I want one of everything I've already seen in your room at my house.
I was like, how far is Richmond? Matt and I'll be there in an hour.
Dude, if you have the express pass, you can be here in an hour. If you don't, you'll want one because you'll want to be here in an hour.
Yeah.
But Baltimore is like ballpark, maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So it's not
That's
that
not too
far.
bad.
You guys
Yeah,
are technically my neighbors.
Yeah, my son's actually got a good friend from Richmond who comes up to our house all the time, so it can't be all that far.
And we have all the stuff on display and everything that you didn't see. I've got like 2 or 3 more rooms full of technology.
No, wow.
Yeah, and you guys are always welcome to come down here anytime.
That's wild.
You're free. Just let me know.
Don't
Weekends,
invite
whatever.
us. We'll show up.
Yeah, we'll show up
Yeah.
with a camera crew. It'll be a whole fucking podcast.
That might be a
situation.
fun
Hey,
time,
you're
man.
Always welcome, man. I can tell
Yeah.
just by getting on with you guys, we're gonna have some fun. So
let's
let
get to it. How'd you get into this, man? It's
Yeah,
weird
man.
shit
So-
that you're in.
So my primary industry that I'm in right now is actually the medical equipment industry, which I've been in for well over 15 years. And the other rooms of the building, we have it decked out right now where I basically can equip an entire hospital. And I've built hospitals all over the world. So right now there's people here from Guatemala that are building a brand new hospital. And we're setting them up with a lot of stuff that they need. I've got an order going out Tuesday to the Philippines, but I can set up your X-ray equipment, your imaging stuff. I'd set up infant neonatal, ER, patient room, da. So I've been doing that for a long time. But one of the things that I do a lot of is medical beds, and in the medical bed industry, what that's done is it's brought me into a subcategory, which is basically intensive care medical equipment for home use. So even though I do sell stuff in bulk in large quantity, I'm one of the only guys in the country that has very high-end hospital grade intensive care hospital beds and equipment for people that are basically homebound.
What
And
falls into that category, if you don't mind me asking? Like just a
How do
couple
you
of
get
them.
out of the hospital and still
Yeah.
be in ICU?
Well, there's a lot of people with ALS, MS, quadriplegic,
okay.
paraplegic, like you get a lot of people that even though they're out of the hospital, they still need a high level of patient care.
Mm.
And
I
if
see.
they don't
Okay.
get it, they're going to get bed sores and things get really ugly real fast. But so there's a big category, and there's just a lot of people that get out of the hospital and figure out what they just got from their insurance company is not going to cut it. And so then they go into a secondary market, and there's not many companies that do what we do, because the beds themselves, we go into the hospitals and get them, and you might pick up 150, 200, 500-pound beds that all have to be stacked, packed, and shipped. And logistically, it's a very big operation.
Mm.
But, because I deal with these people on a day-to-day basis, I'm always sitting there going, okay, there's got to be other stuff that's out there. Now, just to kind of set the whole thing off, I'm 59 years old, so I don't know where I fit, except I'm an old guy. But one of the things for me is that in my lifetime, I have not seen a lot of things change. The way things are done in the medical industry for me are very much the same. Like I said, I deal a lot with ALS, and I wasn't around for Lou Gehrig, but I haven't seen a lot of progress with how they're dealing with ALS as an example. And so there's a part of me that's thinking, well, there's got to be something out there. I mean, it's not like there's got to be something out there that they've figured out, or somebody has figured out that's going to help work with some of this technology. And then you get that whole category of med beds, and that whole thing kind of comes into play. So, maybe about 6 years ago, I said, well, I'm going to check into this. I mean, what is this stuff all about? And is there stuff out there that's in the alternative category that might actually be able to help people? And so that's kind of what got me into it. And then, as I got into it and started finding technology, now, first off, let me just say that there's nothing that's in the wellness technology or the health that I call it energy and frequency based technology is kind of where I classify it, but it's totally different than the medical industry. Now, there's some things that might have some similarities, but generally speaking, when you get into this realm, it's almost like going back to school. And that's exactly how I took it. I realized real fast, doesn't matter what I'm doing in medical, it's not translating over. If I really want to know what the heck's going on, I got to get notebooks, pads of paper, and I got to study. And I started traveling around the country, and I'd meet with people, that were experts in individual things, because the only way I'm going to learn it is by getting in front of people that are obviously smarter than me. And there's a lot of people out there that are very highly intelligent, that understand things and are good at explaining them. But that's kind of where the whole thing started. And as I started getting my hands on the technology, my first course of action was, let me vet this stuff and see if there's anything to it first off, because I don't know anything about it. I don't want to get out there and put my name on it and promote it unless I really understand, what it is, how it works, and that I've actually used it. And so one of the technologies, one of our most popular technologies, is something called a terahertz wand. And this terahertz wand is something that throws off a blue light, and it sends like energy into a very small part of the body, which includes red light, blue light, the terahertz frequency, which we can talk about later, but it's an optimal frequency for the cells, reduces inflammation, increases circulation, enhances cellular regeneration, and a few things. But make a long story short, it's really good for pain, stiffness, soreness, arthritis. And that was one of the first things I got into, along with grounding. And I said, well, I'm going to drop like $3,000. I'm going to buy a bunch of these things. I'm going to start.
Did you hold on? When you say you were using it, did you have like any of those things, like stiff?
Were you
this,
symptomatic
that,
and stuff?
I wasn't symptomatic, but I was. So some of the stuff that I use it for is like I lived in San Diego for almost 30 years. So although I don't look as bad, but I've used it a lot for skin. So I've taken a lot of the wrinkles out of my face. I've used it a lot for mouth, teeth, and gums. There was a time where I was running around with kidney stones where I just was screaming in pain. I used it a lot for that. I've used it for a whole host of things over the years. Like sore throat. I use it a lot just for prevention with mouth, teeth, and gums, because it, sometimes it's good to try to stay in front of stuff. But what I did is I found people that had a lot of the symptoms that were, back pain, shoulder pain, and I basically give them out and say, hey, you know what, I'm sort of test driving this technology. It's new. I'd like to give you this technology and have you use it for a few weeks and give me your feedback on it. And so that's kind of where it started from. But when that technology eventually landed in the States, it had actually been out for well over 10 years. So there was a lot of documentation on it. There was a lot of testimonials. A lot of what I do is, obviously I want to know the science and the physics, but I also want to know, I want to see real people using it that have actually had feedback. Because to me, that's really where the rubber meets the road. You can talk tech talk, but the reality of it is it really benefiting people? And then I started seeing the testimonials, and I was blown away. And I said, "Oh my God, it's like Luke Skywalker out of Star Wars, except this is instead of a light ray beam, it's a beam that's sending like beneficial energy into the body." And I've got, probably on my YouTube channel at least 50 testimonials just on the terahertz wand. There was a guy that was just on the other day who's got muscular dystrophy, and he's been hit on his bike. He's tried to stay active, and he's really tried to do what everybody says he couldn't do, which is maintain his physical capacity at some level. But through the course of his biking and that, he's been hit several times and is in severe pain. And I'll never forget one of the calls I was on with him as he started going into this. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is a guy that, had the terahertz wand. I'm going to hear this story about his back or his ankle. And, I'm going to kind of let him But this guy's getting into the pain is so bad that he's going to kill himself. And then he's getting into that. And I'm going, whoa, 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 dude, where is this going right now?
Right.
And it hit me so far out of left field. Like this story, when I heard it, I literally started crying. I mean, it's hard sometimes to, I don't know the journey. I don't know people's story. I mean, I talk to them, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes in these phone calls, we're talking, well, help this, and I'll tell him some stuff. But this guy, he was so messed up that it took him 40 minutes to put his shoes and socks on to go out back behind the barn to get his gun and go shoot himself. And somewhere along that course of time, in that 40-minute period, because the pain was so bad. And I don't know if you guys, I've had sciatic pain. I've had real bad back pain when I was younger. And the pain just like, it wears you down. This guy obviously was in much more pain than I ever was. But, I start getting these stories. I'm like, wow, man, I always start off and it always sounds good. You say, well, if I could just help one person, the whole thing would be worth it. Right. And this started off probably in the first year that I started doing this, but this guy with this story, it took me apart. I would, and now obviously it's 5 years later and there's hundreds, if not more stories from, some of these people. I never get back in touch with them again, but that's kind of how the whole thing started. And then as I started getting into this technology, I thought, wow, a lot of people don't know what this is. I have access to get people on my channel. And I want to start interviewing these people. I want to start sourcing and vetting other technology. But the interesting thing about it is that as you start doing that, it brings you into a history lesson, right? Because if you come into what's out there now, it's very hard to start that conversation without rolling back to Nikola Tesla. Because a lot of technology is...
You would be the first person to mention him on this show.
You can't imagine how many times his name has come up in the last 10 shows. It's like ridiculous. And, I'm like, wow. This fucking guy is like on every show now. I'm like, Jesus, do we have a sponsor by Tesla?
Well, the funny thing is, like I said, for me, I'm in my 50s. I know about Tesla. I don't know anything about what this guy did. I know about the Wycliffe Tower. I know that he was working in Niagara Falls, but I don't really know anything about a lot of the other technology. Although now I do know a lot about the technology and a lot of the stuff, and I can share some really funny stories. But then it gets into stuff that gets even more like, whoa, dude, what's going on here? Because now you're getting into stuff that's inscribed in hieroglyphics and pyramids, and now you're going back. You tipped
your hat
thousands.
to that earlier.
Yeah, man, that's the one. That's the one that's going to be a hard sell for me. But
here's the thing.
Can we take that detour now? Because I got to know what.
Let's get on that train.
Let's do it, because if you go to my YouTube channel, I've got all these videos on there. Now, one of the videos that I posted most recently, I don't know if you guys have heard about the pillars that are underneath the Kaffa pyramid complex.
I mean, we've been following the story just like everybody else, but I don't know.
So they've got
and we're seeing a lot
of
pushback too on that. Where it's like,
well, I mean, it's like if it's there or not there, it's factually there. So how it got there and why it's there, that's probably open for speculation. But you still can't argue with the fact that there's 900-ton stones that are mounted up on buildings that we still can't do today. And that Kaffa pyramid has like 12 cylinders going underneath it, a kilometer under the ground. And underneath those cylinders are copper wire that goes around them. And, everybody thinks that this was all done with guys rolling logs and, pulling ropes. And it's like, there's just no way that was actually happening. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story with the Los Angeles Art Museum, but they decided that for one of their exhibits, they were going to drop a 30-ton boulder in the front of their place as like a welcome to this new exhibit. It took them over 20 cranes, maybe more than that. It was an astronomical task to move a 30-ton boulder. And we're talking about rocks and stones that are 900 tons. And many of these are up in very high areas and areas that, you're just not pulling logs and stones. It's not happening.
Yeah, so you're not going to get behind it and push it up the mountain.
Yeah.
Dude, no way. And so I don't know how they did it, but I will say one thing. These people were very highly sophisticated. Like, they've done things where they've looked at a lot of the inscriptions, and they're saying that was all done with lasers. They had technology that was drilling into some of the hardest rock that was out there, and they can tell by the divots in the spin how they were doing it and how far down they were going per spin that we still can't do. So, I don't know all the ins and outs. I mean, I can tell you what I know, and I'm not saying I can back it up factually, but I can tell you the story of what's been told to me about a lot of that. But factually speaking, I think we do have to give credit where credit's due, that these people were actually probably a little more advanced than we give them credit for.
You know, Sean, I think we've had that conversation, Matt and I, with a couple of guests. Like, you know, since we've been humans, we've had this brain, and just because we didn't figure something out now doesn't mean we didn't have some technology or some ideas back then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll definitely agree with you there. But
and like, look, I read Fingerprints of the Gods years ago. It took me an entire summer to read that fucking book, but it was great, you know. And in there they had that quartz skull that was like carved against the crystalline axis and accurate to like a 64th of an inch or something ridiculous.
Yeah,
Right?
when
I'm like,
all 7 of those come together, it's supposed to be an apocalyptical event.
But like, it's one of those things where, it's just one of those things where you're like, all right, this would take a geologist, you know, an infinite amount of tools that they definitely did not have. So like, there was clearly something else going on.
There's no chisel marks or anything.
You're right.
On
Yeah,
those
exactly.
things.
It's
Like,
super smooth. That they said it would have taken a river like 200,000 years to wear it down to that level. You know, it's like, you're like, all right. So no, I get it. I mean, summarily, I think we could all agree there's a lot of weird, unexplained shit there.
Stuff
but, like,
we don't know. Yeah.
So those coils that you're describing, have we hypothesized what those things were supposed to be doing?
100%. I can give you the whole. It's like we could just binge watch like Ancient Aliens right now on the show.
We're trying to get him on the show
just,
too.
Like, give you
Believe me, we've had a good time with that one.
Yeah.
But basically, the whole story goes that there was a time when off-planet civilization or technology came down here. There was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Kuiper Belt, but the Kuiper Belt is just a million asteroids spinning around. Not sure where they came from, what they're doing, but technically at one point that was actually a planet. And there was some stuff going on out in the space that blew it up. But there was a lot of things that were unstable within the Earth's atmosphere. And the pyramids actually were originally built to stabilize the Earth's atmosphere. And they were all put in all the basic ley lines. So when they put those in, they knew all the magnetic lines, all the ley lines. Many times there's lava stuff. They're a conflux, but they were actually originally built to stabilize the Earth's atmosphere. It was actually the first free energy system in the planet. And they use those also for germinating seeds. If you're familiar with the Bosnian pyramid, that's one of the few pyramids that's actually open to the public. And there's a gentleman named Sam Brzanovic, who's really very much of an expert in pyramid technology. But there's been thousands and thousands and thousands of miraculous healings under there. And it gets into the geometrics and the vibration and all that different thing. But to make a long story short, the people that came down, the ancients, as we like to call them, they weren't doing so well in the Earth's atmosphere. And just like every planet, you know, some are more conducive to things than others, but they were using those dual tube plasma energy systems for regeneration. And so that's really where the whole thing of it comes about. And so we're sort of rediscovering it now, if you will. And that comes from Tesla. That's more back to the modern chapter of the last 100 years. But it's very interesting that when you see technology and it's like, wow, why is that inscribed in hieroglyphics? It's like, okay, well, you know, it makes you think, if nothing else. But that's really where the whole thing came about. Now, the plasma spheres are an extension of Nikola Tesla. And Nikola Tesla basically started off with the oscillators. And, you know, I think the other thing that's important with all these shows is we bring up a few names that people probably are not familiar with, but you've got Georges Lakhovsky, Wilhelm Reich, you've got Royal Raymond Reich, who's really just, you know, an amazing person. Reich back in the 1920s built a microscope with over 6,000 working parts and a 60,000 time magnification. And they could actually look at living cells under a microscope. And these guys would sit there in their lab and run frequencies through all these different cells until they could find the optimal frequency to kind of make it dance, if you will, and then find the mortal frequency that could kill a cell. And then they cataloged all this, and then they started, you know, figuring out, you know, we can do this with this. And the Rife technology is a lot of the original frequency-based technology. But Rife and Tesla and these guys were all kind of interwoven together. And so what happens is you've got what I call first generation, second generation, and third generation technology. And so those guys were really in kind of the first generation of technology. And that would also include Georges Lakhovsky, who made a piece of technology called a multi-wave oscillator. One of the things they figured out is that when your health is not doing real well, one of the immediate symptoms is that the vibrational rate of your cells starts dropping. And so as soon as you know that you're in bad health, to restore good health and to get the cell at its maximum potential, you need to restore it back to its optimal vibration. And so the multi-wave oscillator basically had 12 rings on it. Each one of those rings would come into the body and stimulate different parts of different frequencies, because the brain is different than the heart, the lungs, everything in your body runs at a different frequency. But the main goal was to get the cells back to their optimal vibration. And the beautiful part about all this that we're talking about, you can research any of it and go online, and it's all factual, document, case studies of what they were doing. But to make a long story short, they were using Lakhovsky's technology, and they had phenomenal results. Rife's technology also had phenomenal results. Like, they gave him credit for doing a lot of different things, but then things kind of went sideways when the technology was ready to be unveiled to the public. There was, sort of some detours and some things that didn't go so well. And
like
I don't
what
really
though? Like what was it? Just too weird for people?
Well, the guy. So what they did with Rife is they gave him 16 basically people that were mortally, like they were hospice candidates basically, and they took the technology in there. And they gave him 90 days to turn all these people around. And they turned around 14 of them. I think there was 2 that needed an extra month. And they documented everything about this, all these case studies. This was done in Los Angeles. And Boris Johnson, who was the lead doctor that was going to do the press release to announce the amazing results that they had, was poisoned and died like hours before the press release. And then, and then other people were basically disappeared, and it just turned into be a mess.
It's funny because isn't Rife technology technically illegal in the U.S., right? I mean, I've heard some things where they've actually come and confiscated them. I think there was a story about it.
It's just basically sending wavelengths, through. Back in the day, they were using radio wave frequencies, but it was non-invasive and it's not harmful. But they just, Rife got run through the mud. I mean, they just destroyed that guy.
But what was their motivation? Just because it ran counter to the drug companies?
You can't sell drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where I get a little like more conspiracy theory in this. Like that does make sense. If something's cheap and it works, it doesn't make anybody any money.
Well, the Happy Healthy guys that were on our show said that when they went to Spain and he had stage 4 cancer, and they're like,
$30,000.
We're not going to give you any drugs.
Somebody made some money.
and he goes, why? And when it was cured, and he's like, why isn't everybody doing this? He goes, because you Americans, that nobody wants to do shit for this. Doesn't make anybody money. I heard the same
thing about ozone therapy in Italy.
Yeah. It's a reoccurring theme that comes up, but I think, without us having to delve into it, I think for the most part, we're pretty hip to kind of how things work in this world. And there's certainly people that are probably thinking that might not be the best thing for business. But the same thing happened to Lakhovsky. Now, Lakhovsky was Russian born. He did most of his work out of France. They sold the multi-wave oscillators for about 10 to 12 years. And they used them in hospitals in New York, and they had phenomenal success with those. Now, Lakhovsky interfaced with Tesla. They used a Tesla coil to energize those. And those things also were doing really, really well, just based on the simple premise. Now, the other thing to bring up is that the frequencies and the vibrational rate of your healthy cells, like your normal cells, is much higher than the frequency and vibration that pathogens and what I call garbage cells run on. So viruses and pathogens and garbage cells, they run at low frequencies. So when they're put in a field, a high frequency field that's optimal for your good cells, what happens inevitably is that the unhealthy or the bad cells kind of get taken out. And so with this whole category of what we were talking about, they were having very high success rates. There's certain subjects that I don't get into, but I'll paint the picture so you can imagine what I'm talking about. But they were having really, really, really good success with that. And actually, Lakhovsky figured out that when a pathogen invades a healthy cell, it actually changes the vibration of the frequency of the healthy cell, and eventually it kills it. But that pathogen's going to die if it's in the field of vibration that's good for your optimal frequency for your healthy cells. So to make a long story short, it's World War II. Is kicking off, and Lakhovsky's in France, and he's like, hey man, I'm going to the States. We're going to celebrate the technology and everything that's going on in New York. And he gets quote unquote hit by a car. He's dead 3 days later, and all that technology disappears. But the interesting thing is that Lakhovsky was because he was out of Europe, Europeans never really lost the technology. They're still very, very hip to it. Like in Spain, Spain's one of the areas that they still use a lot of Lakhovsky technology.
If he got whacked, how did it survive?
Well, it didn't survive in the States, but it survived in Europe. And then it kind of
so he left the blueprint somewhere with somebody. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
And like technology, I said, the machines were still being operated.
Yeah,
correct. And he was making them out of France in the 1930s, from like 1931 to 1939. So they had marketed these things and sold them all over Italy, France. I mean, a lot of there's original units. Yeah. And the ones that we've got here are actually handmade in Germany. So, so that whole thing kind of happened. But then, and that you would classify those guys under first generation sort of technology, because these guys are all kind of in the know with each other and they're working on different things. Second generation, you would get to a guy named Antoine Prairie, who was based out of France. And Prairie starts getting into this plasma technology, and Prairie is dropping plasma tubes the size of torpedoes, with cranes down through his lab. And I mean, that is really getting pretty crazy. But to make a long story short, over 5,000 documented case studies with Prairie working with plasma energy and using a lot of the same general principles that they were using with Rife and Lakhovsky, but he's using a different medium now. He's using plasma. Plasma, for anybody that's out there, isn't the plasma that's in your blood, but it's actually the fourth state of matter. So you have solid, liquid, gas. When gas gets hit with a lot of energy, it converts it into plasma. And plasma is what the sun is, and plasma are thunderstorms and wormholes, and all that is all plasma. Plasma actually composes the majority of the universe. And it can be, there's a lot that goes into just that whole subject, but basically these systems are usually like glass tubes that have noble gases in them, and they're connected to a generator, and the generator runs enough power to basically excite that gas to the point where it converts it into plasma. And then it kind of gets into like a, depending on the mixture of the gases, kind of like a fluorescent tube, if you will. But some of the things that was going on,
that was the most science we've heard about anybody that we've had on talking about energy medicine. You actually gave us how the thing's powered, which is like actually pretty impressive.
Which I was going to say earlier, Sean, but is that energy medicine is definitely on the prolific rise right now. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that, but I mean, even in our sort of circles, which I mean, are still a little woo-woo circles, obviously, because of what we do here, but like even non-woo-woo people are sort of on it. But it's almost like stages of grief, though, like when people come to know energy medicine, because the first stage is always like, this is fucking bullshit. Like it's always the first stage. Everyone's like, this is crazy, right? And then there's like the science layer that comes next. Like, all right, fine, it's not crazy, tell me how. And everyone wants to know the science. And then there's some rocky roads after that, because like you said it before, but we had Nikki watch on Stephen Davis, and this little watch sends a frequency on the piggybacks on the back of a red light spectrum, and it delivers it in a wristwatch to your body. But he says the same thing. He goes, you could fucking wear this all day long. Your body takes what it needs. And there's where you lose a lot of people, because they're like, well, what do you mean?
Because you think of dosage immediately.
Yeah, you keep of dosing.
One aspirin, great. 50, not so good.
Yeah. And getting people to wrap their heads around the idea that I wouldn't say we've been lied to about the dosing thing, but our whole construct and understanding of health comes from the dosing paradigm, which is take 2 of these and call me in the morning. We've got a million jokes about this even, right? Like it's not, but like with the
well, and also something that is when you start talking, when you move into a I'm going to use the word non-substantial, and we can argue whether or not energy is substantial. It doesn't have actual substance is what I'm talking about. It's very hard for people to wrap their head around how energy can affect the body. Now, I'm an acupuncturist, so I kind of have that built in from an old system. And even some of these claims, Sean, it's like, I want to believe. And then I'm like, oh, but like, oh, it's a little too far for me. And I keep going back and forth because look, I've been wearing the Nikki. I've been noticing some stuff. I do a lot of weird shit that people will say, hey, there's no science behind that. And I think, without getting into the whole, hey, this is trying to be silenced kind of issue, I do think there's plenty of, smoke here, which would explore looking for the fire. It's not, it wouldn't have lasted.
Yeah, the beauty about it, as we travel through the stories that I'll kind of unfold here for you, we are going to get very hippy dippy, but we're going to get really deep into science because everything that we're doing right now and everything I do is 100% backed by physics and science. And Lakhovsky wrote some brilliant books. One of them is called The Secret of Life. And, these are all books and this is all information, but I'm going to kind of lead into some of the new stuff. Finish off with Prairie. There's a term called negantropy. Negantropy is actually time reversal, and it's an actual term, and it's actually based on physics. And if you look at time of what it is, it's sort of the measurement of spin and energy, but you can also reverse that back. So there's different technologies, and they're not necessarily medical related, that talk about what negantropy is, but Antoine Prairie, and you could get into the Philadelphia experiment, some other stuff that gets pretty esoteric.
But I lost some sleep over some books about that.
Yeah. Prairie is messing around these labs, and like I said, over 5,000 case studies. So if you want to get in and really study what this guy was doing, there's a lot of data. But they're finding some really wild stuff happening. But they're also having really good results with a lot of these people that are coming in and using this technology. And Prairie did the majority of his work out of the 60s. So he would, in my category, I would classify him as a second generation person, right? So you get these guys that come in and look at the work of these first generation guys. Then you've got the second generation, and there's others, but Prairie's definitely one of the foremost. And then you get into what I call now your third generation technology. And so the real lead on that would be a gentleman named Dan Winter. And Dan is a former IBM guy, physicist. He's probably right now, and I don't want to guess, but I would say 70 plus. And he basically has committed the majority of his life to teaching. And so everything with Dan is physics-based and physics reality, because he doesn't like anything that's not something you can't put on a chalkboard and scientifically talk about. But one of the things that they're looking at, and this was, maybe about 20 years ago, they've got a lot of really great technology that they've developed, but they're looking at this Rife technology, which is a single tube system. Basically, a Rife system is a single tube system that's connected to a generator. It looks very much like a receiver, like a JVC receiver or a Hitachi that we'd have as kids, except you got a tube on it, right? And they're looking at that going, wow, that thing's really cool. And I understand the principle. It's almost like a radio dial. You spin the dial, pick a frequency, you go to the book. I've actually got the book right here that's got 3,500 Rife frequency codes in it, and say, okay, let's dial in this frequency, right? Well, they're looking at that and they're going, the actual sweet spot in this whole system is being in the tube. And they said, the ideal thing to do would actually be to separate the male and female and create a dual tube energy system. And so they basically developed these dual tube plasma systems. Now, what they're doing is they're basically sending signals from each side, and it's what we call centripetal. Centrifugal, we all know from a merry-go-round, you spin, you're going to go flying out. The centrifugal, or this centipedal is spiraling inward, and it's all being done almost like a conch shell through sacred geometry. And then you send both sides and both signals, they implode and you create an energy field. And so now you're creating these energy fields and you're using plasma. But the interesting thing is that the person in the middle is in what's called a 0 point. And so now this person's in the 0 point of this energy field. Instead of being outward and having it kind of, blow by, you're actually in the middle of it. I'm not sure if you guys
so
are
Sean,
familiar.
when you're talking about that, that's where the apex of the crossing, or is it kind of like a voided out
When they
space?
collide in the middle, what happens is the collision creates this energy field. So you're right in the dead square middle of where the left and the right side are sending signals, and you're right in the middle.
You're in the middle of the contact point.
Yeah, we would call that the 0 point, where the implosion is taking place. Are you familiar with something called an EE system?
No.
Nope.
Okay. There's probably 500 to 1,000 EE systems that are set up around the world. That's also very well documented technology. The main difference with an EE system is that they're actually using it for, instead of using plasma, what they're doing is they're using lasers. But they're performing something that's known as phase conjugation. And phase conjugation is just sending everything in the middle and hitting an implosion point. And the EE system is a very, very well documented technology, a lot of science behind that. Its development, and you could go to eesystem.com and there's just a plethora of information on it. But there's
Tom's like got 27 tabs open now.
I've already downloaded 3 books by Latosky.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. I love it because you kind of get to me like me and you become a junkie. It's like, how is it I don't know this? And this is so cool. And what else don't I know? And then you kind of go from one thing to another. But the beauty about the EE system, one thing that the EE system did, which was really, really important, is it broke into the mainstream. So they had some really big name people that came out with scientists that really helped promote that system. And they sold probably, thousands. There's at least 300 EE system centers in the United States, maybe more. But what it did is it really opened people's eyes up to this whole alternative energy and frequency-based technology. And the EE system, basically what's happening is it's creating a scalar energy field. And if you're familiar with scalar energy, that's the energy that comes off the sun that you technically makes plants grow. You could literally take a copper wire, put it up in a rooftop, and run the copper wire down to a plant in a basement, and the scalar energy hitting that copper and bringing it down to the plant would actually allow the plant to grow without being in sunlight. But that's scalar waves and scalar energy, which is actually very beneficial for the body. It gets into
we had Tom Palladino on our show actually
before he
died.
Yeah, Tom was really an expert in that.
But he was on our show. He was actually one of our earlier guests. So he was our first sort of like really out there technology.
Really out there.
Yeah.
And I think Tom was also a real leader when it came to discussing quantum and quantum technology. And that whole concept in itself will just make your brain melt, because now you're getting into stuff that's just like, it's almost like it's hard to put a calculator to try to figure it all out, because you're getting into concepts that are very, very deep. And
he's got a great, I wouldn't have brought this up or even thought about it unless his name came up. But, going back to what I was saying earlier about people having a real struggle getting their head around this, one of the things Tom said was, you can send as a photograph, because what is a photograph? It's reflected light, which is just your quantum signature. And I was like, fuck, he's not wrong. Like, that's
that was even the stories, study of vibrational medicine. You ever read that? Dr. Alan Gerber, he's talking about all this different technology where, like, literally not only for humans, but for plants and stuff, where like farmers on a horse and buggy would say, hey, my orchard is getting eaten by bugs. Okay, bring me some of the leaves. And they put it on this machine and they turns the dial. And by the time the guy gets home on his horse and buggy, all the bugs are falling off the trees. And it's that's an insane sounding story, but here's an MD writing about it. I think he wrote that book in the 80s or something, but
there's a guy named Walter Russell who lived out of the 20s. He's also what I would call first generation, but they figured out that these energy fields, and actually Lakhovsky did the same thing. He took copper wire and spun it around and figured out that you could create these energy fields within the plant, and you can induce the plant to grow 20 to 25% faster than a plant that didn't have those energy fields. And so a lot of these scientists actually started a lot of their work in the agricultural part of it. And once they started seeing results, then they transferred it into human. But yeah, I mean, you start getting into a lot of this real kind of esoteric information. And I find it interesting that it's never stuff that I grew up learning when I was in school. I don't know if I would have wanted to learn it in school where I was with my brain at that point in time, but as an adult, and I'm hearing some of this stuff for the first time, I'm thinking it's really, how is it I don't know this? And I'm gonna move into some other stuff that'll also kind of get kind of like funny, but also like crazy. I mean, but to make a long story short, you got Antoine Prairie. Now you're getting into the dual tube plasma systems. That's really when you get into medbed systems and what I call medbed technology, the term is very generic. It's very misunderstood. Anything that gets into energy and frequency based technology, you can throw it in a pod you don't need a pod to use it. But to make a long story short, probably one of the greatest benefits, well, the red light technology has also got a lot of FDA approval. There's a lot of science that the whole red light thing blew up 5-6 years ago as soon as the FDA cleared all the data. And there's a ton of data on red light, which, that's a 2-minute search in Google. But
yeah, that goes back to the 70s. So, I mean, they've been doing that shit for a long time.
Well, over 50 years probably now. We've had panels for at least almost a decade. So
yeah. Well, the probably the most powerful technology for us as humans, the number one energy and frequency is actually grounding or earthing. And you can't talk about that without thinking hippies and Woodstock, because if you're not thinking hippies and Woodstock.
Hey, Sean, can you see this?
Yeah.
Dude.
I got one under my desk too. Not where I'm at right now, but I have
love
one.
it. But I mean, when you start figuring out how powerful that is, it's like, okay, how in God's name do I not know anything about that? Now, not for you guys, but for your audience, I can throw down some information about what it is, how it works, and why it's beneficial.
Could you real quick? Because I'll be honest with you, I got a grounding mat mostly because Tom was we played gadget off.
And the technology really isn't that expensive if you think.
I paid like $30 for this thing. It's not about cost, but like I put my feet on it every day for as long as I can remember, and I just keep telling myself this is doing something. This is something. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. The grounding technology. First off, the best movie ever is a movie on YouTube called The Earthing Movie. So if anybody's listening to this and you really want to watch a great movie, it's a documentary. It's about 2 kids that are doing a documentary. They get exposed to toxic chemicals. They have a baby. The baby's got a ton of health issues, and they go on this journey figuring out how they're going to help this little baby. But they bring in a lot of doctors. One of the doctors is Dr. Steven Sinatra, who's a cardiologist out of New York, Nobel Prize winner. And so they get in. Now, one thing I just want to preface this by is that according to the World Health Organization, more than 80% of the people on the planet Earth die from some type of inflammation-related disease. So the number one killer on the planet Earth is inflammation-related issues. And the inflammation that we're talking about is not inflammation where you twisted your ankle. This is inflammation that's a silent buildup inside. And basically what it is, it's a buildup of cells referred to as free radicals. And when you touch the earth and when you're grounding, your body is absorbing electrons. And free radicals, by definition, are really cells missing an electron. And if you're running around with rubber sole shoes and you're not really touching the earth or doing what you guys are doing with a grounding mat, what's happening is you have, my buddy calls it electron deficiency syndrome, meaning the body doesn't have electrons, right? Now, you can get antioxidants through berries, but you're never going to eat enough. I mean, the number that the body needs And
Yeah, you need
so,
like a wheelbarrow of blueberries to make
dude,
it.
at
Yeah,
least a
yeah,
wheelbarrow, right? And
yeah.
hopefully, but to make a long story short, every time the body replaces a bad cell, the white blood cell goes to that area and it releases a free radical cell. And this is just part of the normal turnover of cells. I think we all know that every 6 months or 2 years, the whole body's been replaced. Cellular, you're all new. But what happens is when the white blood cell sends that cell to replace that bad cell, the free radical goes in and it takes out the bad cell. But when the free radical is done, when the body is maintaining grounded status or earthing status, you're full of electrons, as soon as the free radical cell is done with that, the body provides an electron, it neutralizes the free radical, job's done, game over. But what's happening, and this is where the problem is that nobody's touching the earth and nobody has electrons. And so once that free radical cell is done, it's not getting the electron from the body. So what it's doing is it's stripping an electron off of a healthy cell. And it's damaging a healthy cell by stripping the electron, and thus it's getting the body to send another white blood cell to replace the cell that the free radical just damaged. And actually what it's doing is it's setting off a chain reaction.
Cascade, yeah.
It's a cascade effect, and this is silent inflammation. So this is now where the problem lies, because now you've got this silent inflammation. Now, if you understand free radicals, missing electrons, they're unstable cells. So they're bouncing around, you're getting a buildup. This is where you've got your lingering arthritis, back pain, shoulder pain, stiffness, soreness. That's a very clear symptom of free radicals. But one of the first real issues that happens when you do not have free radicals in your body is it compromises the red blood cell wall. And so instead of the red blood cell walls being bouncy and repelling other, they start basically clumping and clotting. And your red blood cells basically start becoming almost like jelly. They start sticking together. And so now what's happening, and this is one of the primary breakdowns within the body, is that you have all these red blood cells, they're clumping and clotting. Well, now guess what? Now your heart has to work a lot harder to pump blood through all your organs because the blood viscosity is not ideal. And so now this is putting you in a lot of situations which high blood pressure, you could think of all the related things that are probably not good with your thickening of your blood, which I liken that to running dirty motor oil in a car. But within just a few hours of grounding, the minute your body starts, and your body absorbs electrons very fast, but one of the first things that you'll see within hours is that the blood viscosity goes down and the blood starts going back to its normal cellular structure. And so
yeah, when I first got my Beamer mat, they said you could stop grounding because you're sitting on this PEMF mat. I'm doing like 40 minutes a day of PEMF. And they're like, well, you don't really need it. And I'm like, well, it sits on the floor. I don't really need to go out of my way.
It's pretty much passive technology.
It's about as passive as it gets. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm going to grab here. I got the stuff that I use is, if you can see this.
Yeah.
Okay. This is all silver.
Yeah.
That's silver thread. So when I'm touching this, I'm really grounded because, for anybody that's out there that doesn't understand, first of all, let's talk the difference between earthing and grounding, because both those terms are very synonymous. Earthing is when you physically touch the ground and you're touching the earth. Grounding is when you're touching a piece of fabric like what you guys have and what I have. And it's doing the same thing. Now, since the 1950s, code building in the United States required that you had a grounding rod outside of any home or building being built. And that's basically the three-prong plug. It's the little circle. And basically what that does, it protects you from an electrical surge. So if there's ever a huge strike of lightning, what it'll do is it'll run that excess energy into the grounding outlet and from the grounding rod into the copper rod, and it'll neutralize that excess energy so that nobody gets blown up or the house doesn't start on fire. But on the flip side of that, that grounding rod, being that it is conductive, can bring that earth energy from the earth and into that electrical outlet. If you see here, this is really the only thing you're
Just the
using. It's just
ground.
a grounding outlet.
Yeah.
These plugs here are plastic because you don't really need them.
Mine
there's
doesn't even
nothing
have those two
electrical.
other things. It's
No,
just
I
the
just
stick.
got the ground. It's just got a ground.
I
That's
just
it.
put
Yeah.
it right in.
It's still working. I mean, the bottom line is that you're hip enough to understand the premise of
Yeah.
it. And the more important thing is you're getting actual time of use by putting your feet on it. Even, that's really what it comes down to. Because even though we all know going outside is all well and good and it's great, a lot of people throughout their daily life don't have the time to say, I'm going to go outside for 30 minutes and do that. But
Is that the
to make
minimum effective dose? I was going to ask you that next, like for grounding or
the
earthing.
longer the better. There's a Dr. Mercola who is
Yeah.
I take
guys
his
familiar with
hydrogen
Dr.
actually.
Yeah, Dr. Mercola is based out of, I think he's out of Jacksonville, but in the movie, the Earthing movie, Mercola is basically on the Tour de France in France, right? And he's hired to help the American athletes, the American bicycle guys. And he's looking around and seeing all these Europeans attaching all this grounding stuff to these bike guys after they get done with their routine, because obviously it's reducing inflammation and it's oxidative stress, whatever. But he gets turned on to the whole thing. So Mercola's like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to figure this out. Mercola goes on and does a ton of research. He's got books on it. Mercola stays grounded 20 out of 24 hours a day. Hold on just a sec.
That's crazy, man. 20 hours a day. I guess it's easy to do though if you have bed
doesn't have
sheets.
shoes.
But it's like what you guys are doing. He's walking. He's got little pads on his computer desk. He understood how powerful grounding was. Any grounding is good grounding, right? So if it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but in an ideal scenario like this right here is actually a blanket. I have pillowcases and sheets.
Mattress
so when I
covers,
go to,
all of it.
And so the grounding sheets are popular. Now you just pass out and go to bed and you're grounding and you're getting that electron donation coming in, which is but the other part about it, really even to take it into the next step, is that scientific studies, 21 published studies, white papers show that the grounding technology produces up to 20% deeper REM sleep. And so your brain
that sounds like something we could test.
Yeah, your brain. Well, you can do it nowadays with those Apple watches.
No, we've got all of them. I've got rings and watches and all kinds of,
Thank you. Yeah. Good night. And so, but you can test it and you can study it. Well, the interesting thing is your brain waves run on the Schumann resonance. The frequency of the earth is the same frequency that your brain waves run on. And so, what's happening is it's putting you in sync with the natural rhythm that we've probably been on the planet Earth for whatever. We've pretty much tuned into it. But
do you plug those blankets in? Do you have to put that into the wall?
You just plug them into the grounding outlet.
Right, just the grounding.
These here actually also have amethyst and tourmaline and other crystals. So when you lay on those, you do get some red light benefit out of it. But these are sort of, and these are actually made out of Charlotte, North Carolina. These right here, all the silver is coiled. It's not a strand. So when it flexes and bends, it doesn't break the strands. But, like I said earlier, any grounding is good grounding, and whatever products you've got. I mean, we've got a bunch of them here, obviously, because, that's kind of what we do. But that's really a primary base technology that everybody really should embrace. Even if you don't buy the grounding technology, if you understand how important it is for you on a multitude of levels for your overall health and wellness. But the number one thing it does is that when your body brings in those electrons and it neutralizes free radicals, it's reducing inflammation. And as you reduce inflammation...
Sorry, there was a little gap there. Does a grounding mat, it seems like the grounding mats would be the easy button for inflammation versus taking like the molecularized hydrogen or fistfuls of
massive amounts of antioxidants. Exactly.
Like, I mean, is that a fair read on the situation? I
mean, I just feel like every layer of technology or every layer of things that you can do all have benefit. And so everybody has a different ability and a different, way of doing things. I think the number one thing is being conscious of what it does and why you want to do it. And then how you get accessibility to it is going to be based on the individual person. But I think just understanding how powerful that is, the whole thing with electrons, and it's a very basic concept, but electrons come from the sun, they hit the earth, they bounce into the ionosphere. the Earth gets hit like 5,000 times every 30 minutes with lightning strikes. The Earth itself is primarily nickel and ore and iron. It's technically metal. And so you're running all this you're pulling these electrons into the Earth through lightning strikes. And we're electrical creatures. Every function of our body is technically being run on electricity. So the most basic premise of the whole thing is the Earth's a battery and you're a little electrical creature. And just like you plug in your electric car, you need to plug in your body. And whether you do that with earthing technology or grounding technology, you get out, put your feet on the Earth. If you understand how important that is, and like the original statistic, which is more than 8 out of 10 people drop over dead from inflammation-related diseases, and you can prevent that by touching the Earth. To me, that's like crossing the end zone, spiking the ball, and going, yeah, man, I don't even need technology. I can actually just embrace things around me in my third dimensional reality that'll also really help my overall health and wellness. And I love to push technology, but I also like to push general knowledge and information that says, I don't know if you always need it. There's a lot of things you can do, even like sunlight, that are very beneficial. But if you understand what, how, and why, and you rotate that through your routine in life and say, I'm not going to be out much, better get something.
I mean, Tom says this all the time. He's like, you wouldn't need to go to Tom's office if you just jumped in the river
a little bit more,
If you went in the river in the wintertime, you walked outside in the daytime
cold
barefoot
when it was cold,
in the
you got
fields.
warm when it was warm, and you were out existing in nature. I mean, I think the concept is, we hear it, people call it rewilding or returning to nature, all that stuff. And it's like, we're still animals, and people forget that.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, the beauty about what is it that you're doing, the acupuncture?
Yeah.
The beauty about that is that you're tapping into technology that's thousands of years old. That acupuncture science did not happen last year. That's thousands of years of basically people understanding the whole system of the body, and you're working with sending energy through the body. And so the concept of what that's doing is also very, very scientifically based. It's very easy to understand that you've got all these energy fields, and we need to send more energy here, or reroute that energy from this to that. And then you get into all your acupuncture points, all this information is synergistic. Like, you can't get into one and not be able to fall right into the other, because they all basically are interconnected. And then you get into because the Asian people were very advanced. And then not even, we did a call, I had a lady, a PhD in sound therapy. And then we get into the Tibetan monks, and we're talking about things that are very simple technologies like sound bowls, but it's very effective. So
before electricity, how were you generating frequency? That is a big thing. Sound, your voice, right? This is all, whether it's chanting or whether you're using an instrument, right? This is all, we know this, talking to people who do shamanic practices and breath work and inducing non-ordinary states of consciousness. They're doing it all through frequency.
Beauty about what you just said is that it goes back again to Native American Indians, indigenous people, Aboriginal people, who we say, wow, they're not very civilized. They're actually way more civilized than we are, because they're totally tuned into all this stuff. Native American Indians, if you got sick, they would dig a pit in the earth, lay some hay down in there, and put you directly into make contact with the earth. They were masters of being able to manipulate plasma energy fields. When you talk about rain dances and all those things, you could look at that and say, oh, well, I don't know about that. Well, but if you look at the physics of sound frequency and sound energy and the drums and all this, these people are very, very advanced. And when you get into talking about Dan Winter, who anybody that's out there, if you want to just see smoke come out of your ears, jump on his podcast and listen to some of his videos, because nothing he does is without physics and physics background, and everything is 100% science. Like, Dan is he's a scientist, and he hates hyperbole and he hates opinion. He wants everything to be, but
put it down.
But then you start realizing, wow, these guys could literally steer plasma energy fields, AKA they could move storms and lightning. And even Tesla loved sitting in his balcony and listening to thunder and lightning, because Tesla knew that these were conscious, intelligent energy fields. And you start trying to wrap your head around that. It's like, wow, I've been talking about this stuff for a while, and I still think about it and go, a mindful and intelligent energy field.
Yeah,
wow,
that doesn't calculate for most people, right? I mean, it's not. Well, speaking of which, and I don't want to make too abrupt of a left turn here, but I do want to, before we get out of time, I want to talk, the grounding mats. I think I agree with you. That's sort of like Tom and I call it a hedge. It's cheap.
Well,
it's easy.
I mean, it's one of those things Matt and I used to try and do a scale, right? Like one has the safety, the cost, the effectiveness. And with a grounding mat, look, yeah, there's an initial investment. You're
but it's
not going to hurt yourself.
So it's almost nothing.
And like no damage can happen. So even if it was all in my head, Sean, it's not hurting anybody.
No, but like where I was going with that, Sean, was
sorry.
Those chairs or the beds, right? Like I see the stuff we looked at before the show. I can see the one behind you. These escalate well outside of grounding mat territory from both a cost and an esoteric nature.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that, you still have to believe that they're not harming you. And in order to do that, you have to kind of throw your hat in the wind on the energy therapeutic windstorm. But walk us through real quick, if you could. I'd love to hear a little bit about these more higher order.
Because we are getting on here.
Yeah. Like, are these for people to get at their house, or does Tom put one of these at his studio, or
clinic,
like?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that you're really seeing an evolution in people's attitudes towards technology. Now, the grounding technology obviously is a very good start. Like I was saying earlier, the EE system is, they've really done a great job, because you've got a lot of really high-end doctors and scientists that have all formed this big team that really lay out the physics of exactly what it does, how it integrates with the cell. So you've got on just the EE system, you probably have at least 10 or 15 of the world's best doctors tied in with some of the best physicists. Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, she's one of the people that kind of was big on this, but she's got a real deep background going into three-letter agency studies and stuff that she's done. And so you've got a lot of science behind it. And then what you're doing is, you're changing modalities. Instead of using lasers, you're using plasma. Now, some of these systems, like some of the more inexpensive ones, and then the red light technology, where we've got little red light panels that you can sit on your desk for $150, or you can get the full-size body panel over here for $5,000. But you can find technology out there now that's very inexpensive. So people find and source what works best for them. You're going to find, though, what I'm finding is that fitness clubs, health clubs, like at our place now at our fitness club here in Richmond, they're putting in infrared saunas, right?
Sure.
So now they've got saunas with red light, and you're starting to see a lot of this technology break into the mainstream, and you're going to start seeing more of that. And I will tell you that it's only a matter of time before the floor in your house is grounded.
Yeah, somebody else told me about that.
It's so easy to do too.
The tanning salon across the street from my house got rid of 3 beds and put in red light and infrareds on it. So I was like, that's really fucking funny that a tanning salon.
Yeah, you're doing something in the opposite direction that's much healthier for you.
Right, but people are already used to getting into pods there, right? Like it's already part of the...
It's already, part and parcel.
It really is. And, for me, like I was saying to you guys before we jumped on, when I'm looking at a pod, a quote-unquote medbed pod, all I'm really looking at is what are you running in this thing? Very much like you'd open up the hood of a car and say, what's under the hood? What do we got here? Because the pod itself isn't what's actually doing the heavy lifting. It's the technology that's inside it. And so you'll find that these pods are running plasma energy, red light, they're running PEMF, they're running grounding, they're running sound frequency. Sometimes it's a culmination of a lot of things. Sometimes it's 1, 2, or 3. But there's different pods, different types of stuff that they run in there. But to answer your question, Matt, I would say half of this technology is being purchased by people that's going into their home. And 50% of the technology is going into med spas, wellness centers, chiropractor, offices. You're seeing a real integration, and especially in the last maybe say 2 to 3 years, you're really seeing people open it up and saying, I think that there's got to be a little bit more out there. And even though they might still be a little bit on the fence, they're starting to say, I think that there's got to be some other stuff out there. And then they might hear a little bit about this, and they might hear about red light, and then red light. And, you start getting these published studies, and then the FDA says, hey, this data now is officially published. It's white paper back,
Right.
and this is real. And so now you're like, wow, that's interesting. Light has got all these benefits. It's detoxing. It's stimulating mitochondria. It's giving me extra energy. It's helping with stiffness, soreness, and arthritis. It's stimulating hair follicles and stimulating hair growth. And it's helping lose weight. And it's like, what? Red light? And the interesting thing about the red light and the red light spectrum is that our eyes only see about 7% of the actual light spectrum. And so there is that part of it, because when you get into infrared light, it's still part of sort of the red light spectrum, but your eyes don't pick it up as much. So there might be red light actually coming out of the technology, but it's not like the red light spectrum where it's bright red and you can just see it. And so, but now you're starting to get science catching up, and now you've just got a multitude of wellness technology companies that are coming in from everywhere on the planet with energy and frequency-based technology, and they've got the science to back it up.
Yeah, but the thing that gets me on that one, and we'll take a little bit of a naysayer approach here. Like, I have full body panels. They are Juve knockoffs that we got them straight from a factory in China that made Juve panels. So like, they're essentially the same frequencies. Everything's the same, right? Except for, I also, for my body weight and desired therapeutic outcome, I know those have to be 12 inches away from my skin, forward and aft, in order to be therapeutically effective, right? So just to paint a picture for people who aren't watching, as like 12 inches front and back, you're basically wedged between two panels.
You're between, you're sandwiched.
Like, you're real fucking close to this thing. So when I go on Temu or see all, on Amazon, and you see these $100 red light things that are, you even said it here, we could put it on our desk. Well, unless that thing's got a fucking nuclear power plant behind it to push that energy to that level, there's no way that absorption is
getting
the
a
same.
therapeutic dose.
Like, in which case, what is that, a fucking red flashlight for my desk? I mean, come on. Like,
well, even like a cupping one, I saw a cupping with embedded red light, and I'm like, it's one little LED.
Yeah, like what?
It's not even powered that much, and I mean, you understand the science behind this. There has to be a certain output. There has to be, and a certain intensity of that light.
At a minimum, Tom, you need two LEDs, one for the near and one for the far, right?
One
like,
for
you can't even do the one, right? Like, so like, even on a base level, that's bullshit, right?
And it's not even, we're not even calling the technology bullshit. We're just saying that some people, I think, are selling more of the sizzle than the actual steak,
Well, it's interesting.
And Sean, that's where I get skeptical about some of these beds. It's like, unless you're like in direct contact. I mean, grounding mat's a perfect example. A buddy of mine, I gave him I told him to get a grounding mat. I said, how's it going? I don't know. It's cold. It's wintertime. He's wearing socks. I said, guess what? Doesn't fucking work. You got to actually,
you gotta actually have contact.
And he's like, how do you know? I'm like, do you have a multimeter? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm like, all right, go grab it. I'll show you right now. And I showed him how to like meter yourself. And he's like, holy shit, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah.
I'll share this one story, because I want to make sure we kind of get time to finish up with Sean here. But I bought something off of eBay, which was supposed to neutralize all EMF, or did I get it off of Amazon? And it was just a little plug, right? And I bought the multimeter. I bought an EMF detector. I'm like, I'm gonna show that this thing doesn't work, right? I buy the damn thing for $40, going, I'll just return it after I'm done. Did not look to see that it didn't accept returns. And I was like, I should have read the reviews. Everyone's like, they literally put sand inside of an outlet, a replacement plug, and then put silicone over the end. That's what they sold you. And I'm like, wow, not only does that not work, the potential to short out my whole house and burn it down just went up exponentially if I had that in the wall.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings up a really good point, because one of the things that we really love to do here is we love to vet technology.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that for all the products we've got, there's a lot of products we don't sell, because when we've taken them through that process, I found I don't like it. I can't stand behind it. I don't think it works. I don't, like there's just a lot of stuff, and I don't want to get in and name stuff, but I will say that there's some stuff that's actually been quite expensive that I said, all right, let's put this thing to the test. And then it's like, okay, once we've dissected it and ripped it apart, it's like, you're kidding me right now. You're selling this stuff here for that much money, and you're making this claim and that claim, and it's not even that it might not have some potential value, but the value it has for the price they're selling it for is not at all in line with what it is. And it's like, look, I would prefer that you spend a little extra money, did a little bit more R&D, and put together a product that's actually a little bit more quality, that actually has higher potential benefit, than just try to, fling something together and, like you said, stamp a name on it and then really have little or no value, because, most people will pay a little more if they know it has value, but it's, there's, I think for me and we've got, quite a few people here that we are all part of our team, but there's a lot of stuff that I've looked at and said, or, like what you said, there's no returns. Why not? Like, why aren't there returns? Because clearly if you have a product you could stand behind it and it would be okay. But I do find that, there is a process. The other thing I would say also, even with some of the grounding technology, like I said, I'll just show this to you again, but you can see that there's a lot of silver in this. This is all silver thread. Well, I can tell you how many times I've seen a grounding sheet or a grounding blanket where I can't see any raw material in there whatsoever at all. And it's like the old Wendy's commercial, where's the beef? Well, I understand that in order to ground, I have to connect to the actual
our audience right there.
Grounding material, right? And it's like, okay, but I'd like to see it, and so, and that's not saying that it all doesn't have some potential value. It might, and it very well could, but it's like, I would rather just get something a little better quality, or have something that has a little more beef in between the bun, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And so, I think that with all that being said, that I do like the fact that you're talking about doing a little bit of due diligence and looking into some of this stuff, because I still feel that there's a lot of stuff that's rushing to market. There's a lot of stuff that people are jumping on the bandwagon and producing technology for, but you have to be a little bit cautious and do some due diligence and look into it, and reviews are always the best thing. I mean, for me here at our facility, all the technology that we have here is available to use for free. So we get people that come in from all over the country to use all the technology, because for me, talking of tech talk is not what this is about. It's about delivering actual benefits and results to people that want to use the technology. And so I want the case studies. I want the before and afters. I want to be able to document, this is what this person was feeling and how they came in, and this is what they feel like now. And I want that. That's, to me, is the real crux of what we're doing. And, and as we keep going, obviously we're getting more popular, but that to me means more than having a tech talk about what it does. I want to talk about the mom or the dad or the sister or the brother that said, I'm dealing with this and this is all messed up and now I can walk, and whatever. I mean, we've probably got at least 50 to 75 testimonials on, we've got over 400 videos, but a lot of them are before and afters and letting people tell their story.
That's awesome. Sean, I literally, we could talk to you all month on this, but if I'm not the adult here and say stop, we're going to keep going all night. And trust me, I'd love to. And actually, for those of you who were not, since we weren't recording, that's everybody didn't hear beforehand. Sean made the grave mistake of inviting us to his facility, in which case, we might have.
That'll be part two. We'll be doing interviews.
We'll show up with a camera.
Yeah, we're going to show up with a camera.
We'll show up.
Yeah, please do, because I'm telling you, man, it's like this is like a playground for technology here. And like I said, it's you're going to go through the course of history. You're going to see technology over 100 years old. A lot of Tesla technology, a lot of the more cutting edge stuff that's really right on the cusp of some of the newest and most cutting edge stuff that's out there. And I love to see people. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scan your bodies and put the body scan system on you, and we'll run frequency sets, and we'll actually give you tangible data. So you'll start, and then we'll use the technology, and then we'll do a final scan, and then we'll actually be able to show the benefit and the improvement that you got from that particular session.
We do love data here.
Yeah, we're big data nerds here for sure.
It's important, it's important. I think it's really an important piece of the whole thing. And those bioscan systems, they really pull a lot of data. So to be able to do before and afters and evaluate, is there any benefit to this at all? Because I can't feel it, but if I can see it and I can run technology, then it has more merit. It actually has value. And I feel that
it's hard if somebody doesn't feel something.
It is.
Well,
say this is working. Yeah.
That's the thing that's getting harder. I mean, luckily, knock on wood, I don't have any kind of acute problems right now, but like, when I was getting into Beamer, for example, like there's all these before and after testimonies, people like, oh my God, it saved my life, yada, yada. And I'm like, all right, well, some things like when I have an injury, an acute injury, specifically a muscular thing, I could take that little hockey puck thing and put it on there, and I could tell you that I healed 3 times faster. I know that, but just, but it's ancillary. It's anecdotal rather. It's not like tangible, right? Like I didn't hurt myself, wait for it to heal, time it, then hurt myself the same place exactly again.
Yeah,
then,
you can't have a repeat of the
but
data.
I know, so like getting data is becoming more critical because I don't have that sort of like woo-woo feeling where I'm like, oh, I feel better. I'm like, and I'm actually, today was the last day of a 90-day weightlifting thing that I'm doing. And I stepped on my scale, and another guest told us, they're like, oh yeah, the water in your muscles reads as visceral fat on those bioimpedance sort of scales. And my visceral fat was through the fucking roof. And I'm like, I could look in the mirror and be like, that's not right. So now somebody's like, oh, you got to do a DEXA scan. Why? Because then you have data, like actual data,
tangible
that's hard as a rock. You can't fuck with it. And I'm like, yeah, I wish I would have thought of that before, because I don't feel like doing this 90 days again.
Yeah, you're not going to do another 90. You're going to make me do it, huh?
Yeah,
I love it.
But the data part is so critical, because like you can't just rely on, what do they say, Z-Pack? Like most people take it for like the first day and then stop because they're like, oh, I feel great. They just
I killed enough to tamp it down. Yeah,
to feel better, and they don't even care that it's not done. They're just like, oh, we're just gonna call it. We'll call it there. Yeah. So Sean, where do we send people, man? Like, how do we put people in touch with you? What do you want to tell people?
All right. So on the internet, where a lot of the product stuff is at, is going to be healthylifetechnology.com. So www.healthylifetechnology.com. Our company, USA MedBed, we also have a website there. usamedbed.com is really primarily an information site. Healthy Life Technology really showcases all the technology and products. And then, the best thing to do, really, in my opinion, is jump on some of these videos, because I let the experts and the guys that are making the technology talk and explain the technology, because they're PhD level guys. And the @ USA MedBed 369 is our YouTube handle, and you can go on there. And like I said,
is that a Tesla reference?
Yeah,
ancillary
369.
369, 100%.
Yeah.
But we've got over 400 videos on there now. We've got a lot of data, and I love technology, but I also like not making that always the answer and the go-to. I do think that there has a lot to do with the mind and with nutrition and with exercise. And I think there's a lot of factors that all intertwine. And so as much as I love talking technology, I do also like to try to advocate that people just go out and ground and, do other things that are really important for their overall health and wellness. The technology is great, but there's so much more that we can do to maintain good health. And I try to promote as much of that as possible. I guess what I'm trying to say, I don't want every video on my channel to be a a commercial and a product pitch.
Mm.
I want to have a lot of good content on there that's not related to anything related to a product. So we get a lot of good guest speakers, and we get a lot of other good information that's on there as well that's not related to pitching a product.
Yeah, I like it. And we're not, I wouldn't say we're anti-product here, because we're definitely not. We certainly consume a lot of products, and we've got affiliate links and all that neat stuff here. But I agree with you. Tom and I's passion is more around the why does this shit work? And then if it ends up being that there's a gadget that helps us sort of get there, then okay, great. We'll talk about that next. But like wow, this is a neat, interesting thing that we can play with. Like, and we can find, I mean, we're all about N of one over here. So like all of these things are kind of, Tom just started playing with Neurovisor yesterday. I'm like super psyched to see him play with that. You know,
I've done so many sessions already, and it's a little crazy.
What is it?
Neurovisor.
So believe it or not, now it's going to sound like a commercial for them, but we had Garnet, the guy who invented this. It is some people will call it what
brain entrainment.
Brain entrainment, but it's hypnagogic light or and I've played with some other ones, and this is actually a relatively affordable unit that does what it says it does, man. And I, where he's been fortunate enough to give us access to him, where I've been asking, he's been fortunate enough, we've been fortunate enough to pick his brain, and then he sends us photos of him with the monkeys that he has a primate rescue in Thailand. So it's kind of a good time.
But yeah,
so
I mean,
is that like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Matt.
No.
Like,
see, we got Sean's wheels turning.
Yeah. Well, does that like simulate, like, because you've got alpha, gamma, delta.
Totally.
So does it like use the light to put you in certain?
Yeah, you're in the zip code, dude. You're right there.
Specifically, I'm more interested in the non-ordinary states of consciousness, but focus, sleep, recovery, right? So you wear it with headphones, and there's high quality audio that plays with frequencies like we've been talking about. And he did something very unusual. Now it definitely sounds like a commercial, where he said, look, as humans, we don't, okay, 440's middle C, right? Well, we don't all vibe at 440. Some of us are 439 point. So he roughs them up a little bit, right? All right, I'm going to give you a little higher, a little lower. So within that mix, you're getting a range that should emulate more of the human condition, if you will.
And like that, the thing I like about him is actually the thing I like about people like him. You seem to be in the same camp, which is it's a broader thinking, almost like you're squinting at the problem to see it sort of on a broad playing field and looking at it through that lens, rather than being like, oh, the 640 nanometer, light spectrum is the only one. I'm like, well, that's not empirically true. And if it's a
very narrow view.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm like, if you don't, maybe it's good for some people, but like you get me all hot and bothered over this one frequency that doesn't feel like, even at an intuitive level, that feels incorrect. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like that.
Yeah. I like the fact that it's more the frequency or the message that's being delivered, not exactly the methodology, right?
Yeah,
whether it's sound, whether it's light, whether it's vibration, all of them seem to have a similar effect.
Even when we talked about circadian rhythm with the guy who codified it, right? He's saying, that blue light spectrum is between 4 and like 470. It's a pretty broad spectrum.
It's a pretty broad spectrum. It's not just one little frequency.
It's not just like this one frequency, right? Like, so it's like, all right, cool. So when I went into Warby Parker, funny story, I went in and asked the guy, he goes, oh, these are blue blocking. I was like, do you have the spectroscopy
is it sky blue?
on there? And you know what? To his credit, he looked at me, smirked, looked behind him as though somebody was listening to me. He looked back, he goes, we actually don't. And I was like, so you said that a little funny. He goes, because A, you're not the first person to ask. B, if we're going to make a claim about blue blocking, we should have an actual chart that tells people that at an actual
the frequency,
spectral representation of what exactly is getting blocked. Because if it's 380, that's not exactly blue blocking now, is it? Right? Like if it's 510, that's also not blue blocking, right? So like, and so he said, I think corporate might have one, but you'd have to call them. I'm like, well, I hope you understand. We just met. but you should know I'm not going to do that.
I'm going to call corporate.
I am not going to call corporate because I'm not going to spend time doing that. You should have this chart in this store. I'm just saying. But,
yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, Sean, amazing talking to you, my friend.
Man, you gave me a lot to chew on.
Yeah.
I mean,
appreciate
so
much
much
to work with.
Stay in touch, you guys, because like
Let's
I
do
said,
it.
you guys are always welcome down here, and you're only 2 hours away.
Yeah, no, we're going to definitely plan a day with you.
It'll be a field trip, man.
Yeah, we're going to do a field trip down there.
We'll all have some fun together, and yeah, man, you'll be my 2 new case studies.
Yeah, nice. All right, guys, enjoy the weekend, everybody. Be good. Take care.
All right, take care, guys.
Take care,
Thank
Sean.
you.
Thank you.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.